A wounded woman fled from bandits and found herself in the care of a cowboy who had quietly built his own domain. Easy now, darling. You're bleeding all over the sand. Who did this to you? June froze. Her hand moved instinctively behind her, fingers grazing the handle of the small knife hidden in her waistband. Her breathing was quick and shallow. The voice was deep and steady, surprised but not threatening. A tall man approached, broad-shouldered, wearing a dust-caked cowboy hat and a long canvas coat. His boots made soft crunching sounds on the dry gravel. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, raising both hands. "But you need help. That wound's too deep for just a bandana and a prayer." June looked into his eyes, searching for malice or calculation, but found only concern, adrenaline, blood loss, and fear made her body tremble. She was barefoot, her torn jeans soaked with blood at the thigh, her shirt ripped open on one side. "I don't need help," she muttered, edging away. "You're limping," he replied. "Pretty sure your legs disagree." The sun was sinking, stretching shadows across the barren hills. A gust of desert wind stung her eyes and sent dust swirling through the fading light. Her vision swam. She blinked hard, her knees threatening to buckle. He took a cautious step forward. "Let me help you stand, just to get you out of the wind." June's voice was raw. "No cops? If you call anyone, I'm gone. No one's coming. I don't like sirens either." She studied him, chest heaving, weighing whether to trust him at all. Then the world tilted. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. When June woke, she was bathed in lantern light, surrounded by the scent of smoke and leather. Pain throbbed in her leg, and she tried to sit up. "Easy," the cowboy said, gentler now. "You're safe. I stitched you up as best I could." She looked around. They were in a small wooden cabin with stone walls and a slanted roof. There were no pictures or electronics, just simple furniture, a wood stove, and the sound of a fire crackling outside. Her leg was propped up and wrapped in clean gauze, though blood still seeped through. "You live out here?" she rasped. "I do." "Are you some kind of survivalist?" He gave a half-smile. "I just like the peace and quiet." She squinted, tried to read him. "Name?" "Caleb." "Why help me, Caleb?" He paused. "Because someone else didn't." June swallowed, her throat dry. "Got water?" He handed her a tin cup. She drank greedily, wincing at the pain. When she finished, she asked, "Where are we?" "Dust Valley. Middle of nowhere by most maps." "Perfect." Caleb fed another log into the fire. "You want to tell me what happened?" "No, fair enough." Silence settled. June looked at her bandaged leg, then at the door. "I'll be gone by morning." "You won't make it 3 miles on that leg." "I'll crawl if I have to." He didn't argue. He fetched a clean shirt from a shelf and set it beside her. "You can stay as long as you need. As long as you don't bring trouble here." "I already did," she said, eyes hard. "They're coming." His jaw tightened. "Who?" "Men with guns. Bad ones. They were supposed to take me somewhere. I ran." Caleb nodded. "Cartel?" "Worse. Private contractors. They don't leave witnesses." She shifted, pain flickering across her face. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you," Caleb said quietly. "You don't know what you're getting into. I've handled worse than men with guns." That night, June barely slept. Her body ached, her mind spun with fear. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the trauma and distrust, she clung to the quiet firelight and the calm presence of the stranger who hadn't turned her in or demanded answers. She drifted off to the distant howl of coyotes. At sunrise, Caleb was already outside, tending the horses. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of the land. June limped to the doorway, leaning on the frame. "Ever use a rifle?" he asked, not looking back. She hesitated, then took the one he offered. June checked the safety instinctively, eyes scanning the horizon. Then she saw it, tire tracks deep ones. At least 2 vehicles had left the main dirt road less than 100 yards from the cabin, looping toward the eastern ridge. Her stomach dropped. "They're close," she whispered. Caleb followed her gaze, jaw clenched. "They're tracking you." June's throat tightened. I thought I lost him at the canyon. You left blood behind, he said grimly. That's enough for dogs or determined men. He looked at her, his eyes sharper. They'll be here by tonight. She gripped the rifle. Then we'd better be ready. Caleb nodded. We will be. As the sun rose, setting the horizon ablaze, both knew the quiet was over. June woke to the scent of cedar smoke and something simmering over the fire beans, maybe, or a thick stew she hadn't tasted in years. Her leg still hurt, but it was cleanly bandaged. She sat up slowly, wincing, and found herself in the same small cabin. Caleb was just outside, sharpening a knife on a stone, his back broad beneath a worn flannel shirt, his hat on the rail. The air was crisp and clear, broken only by birdsong and the windmill creaking behind the cabin. He didn't turn when she appeared in the doorway. You always this quiet? She asked. Caleb glanced over. Only when someone's healing. I'm not healing. I'm hiding. Same thing, some days. June limped to a stool and sat. He handed her a mug of strong, bitter coffee. She drank, grateful he didn't ask questions about her past, who was after her, or why her eyes looked older than her face. That unsettled her more than any question could. Don't you want to know what I did? She finally asked, staring into her cup. If you want to tell me, you will. What if I'm dangerous? Caleb looked at her, his eyes steady but not gentle. Then you wouldn't be afraid. June exhaled, her relief mixed with a weight she couldn't name. She took another sip of coffee and gazed out at the landscape vast, wild and untouched. Nothing but sand, scrub, and sunlight crawling over distant hills. A place that couldn't truly be owned, though some might try. What is this place? She asked. Mine. You own all of it? He nodded. She stared, surprised. What do you do with it? Caleb's lips twitched in a half-smile. I watch over it. Let it be. You don't sell it? No. No cattle, just horses. And quiet. June studied him. His hands were rough, his clothes simple, but nothing about him seemed ordinary. He moved like someone who'd built things, lost things, and fought for something greater than himself. So what do you actually do? She pressed. Caleb paused and replied, I care for the land. That's enough. She narrowed her eyes. You mean like a rancher? Or like a... She stopped herself. He didn't answer, just took her empty mug, refilled it, and handed it back. By afternoon, June's curiosity had only grown. She tried to ignore it, but Caleb's silence made it harder. It wasn't a silence that concealed secrets, but one that invited honesty. She sat by the fence as he worked the corral, guiding two horses with calm, practiced hands. His patience and steadiness felt rare, almost sacred. She remembered hands that once held her too tightly, smiles that became cages. A man she trusted, who betrayed her for money, left her to be delivered to men with cold grins and colder knives. Now, watching Caleb, she felt something unfamiliar. Safety. You ever going to ask me what happened? She called. He stopped brushing the mare and looked up. Only if you want to tell me. June hesitated. Sold me out. My ex said I was a liability. Gave them everything where I lived, where I'd be. I was supposed to vanish. Caleb didn't react like others. No shock, no anger, no pity. Just a slow, deep breath. Sounds like someone else made a choice they shouldn't have to live with, he said. June looked down, her throat burning. It's stupid. I should have seen it coming. Trusting isn't stupid, he replied. It's brave. The betrayal's on them. She blinked back tears. It had been a long time since anyone said that. Maybe no one ever had. He came over, leaning on the fence beside her. You planning to stay gone forever? I don't know. I don't know where gone ends. You'll know when it feels like breathing again. June let that settle. She watched him for a moment. Why live out here alone? He looked to the hills. When you've seen what money and ambition do to people, a little quiet and open sky is the only cure. You were rich, weren't you? Caleb didn't answer. You still are. He smiled. Just barely. I'm exactly where I need to be. That night, June lay awake under a thick wool blanket, staring at the beams above. Caleb was in the next room, working quietly by lantern light, and for the first time in ages, her heart wasn't racing with fear, just questions, and maybe a little hope. The fire came without warning. June woke to the sting of smoke and the flicker of flames on the cabin walls. Outside, boots crunched on gravel, glass shattered, and a voice yelled, "Where is she, Caleb?" She reached for the rifle. Gone. Caleb was gone, too. As the front door slammed open, June dove through the back window, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through her leg, but she crawled into brush, every breath ragged. Voices echoed through the trees. She can't have gotten far. Carter's got the girl. Find her. She squeezed into a rocky hollow, blood soaking her bandage. Her heart pounded. They knew Caleb's name. Then another shout. Caleb. She couldn't stay hidden while he was out there. She grabbed her knife and crawled back toward the burning cabin. Smoke curled through the trees. Through the haze, she saw Caleb on his knees, his face bruised and bloodied. One man stood over him. Another aimed a shotgun. Should have stayed buried, Carter, the gunman, said. Your little land project ends tonight. You think this is about land? June crept closer. The gunman lifted his weapon. Hey! She shouted. All three turned. She lunged, driving her blade into the gunman's side. He howled, dropping the gun. Caleb surged up, punching the second man in the jaw. A third attacker rushed June, but Caleb tackled him. They struggled in the dirt, fists flying. June grabbed a shotgun and fired. The man staggered back, wounded. The others fled into the trees. June dropped the gun and ran to Caleb. He leaned against a log, gasping, blood on his shirt. You're hit, she said, pressing her hands to his side. Just a graze, he muttered. They'll come back. Northridge, he said. Family. Land. Safe. She threw his arm over her shoulders. You saved me. Now I save you. They moved through the woods, the fire behind them glowing in the night. Caleb stumbled, groaning, but never let go of her. Before dawn, they reached an old ranch house, weathered and forgotten. June helped him inside, eased him onto a cot. Both were bloodied, exhausted, and shaking. But they were alive and in the ashes of the night. Something between them had changed. Something real. The old ranch house was still the next morning. The only sound the occasional groan of old wood shifting in the wind. Sunlight slipped through cracks in the faded walls, painting long stripes across the dusty floor. June moved slowly, her legs aching but her spirit reignited. Caleb slept in the other room, his skin pale from blood loss but his breathing steady. She'd done her best to patch him up. Now, curiosity pulled her forward, stronger than her fatigue. She wandered through the house, each step cautious over creaking boards and scattered tools. It was the kind of place that once echoed with family, laughter, and life. Now it was just a shell of memories. But it wasn't completely empty. In a back room, June discovered a rusty metal cabinet, its doors ajar. Inside were stacks of old land maps, yellow documents, and folders worn at the edges. She reached for the top folder, dusting it off. Carter Land Group. The name echoed in her mind. She opened the file property deeds, transaction ledgers. Some records were nearly a decade old. Dozens of names. Parcels bought, sold, sometimes reclaimed. Many of the later files were stamped in red, reclaimed. June pulled out more folders, scanning for signatures. Caleb's name appeared repeatedly. Sometimes he was listed as CEO, sometimes as buyer but never as seller. There were letters, too. Correspondence with banks, nonprofits, lawyers, and photographs. One photo showed Caleb beside a smiling couple in front of a red barn. Another had him shaking hands with a group of farmers. He looked younger, clean-shaven, but it was definitely him. June sat back, stunned. Caleb hadn't just watched over the land. He'd built something much bigger. When he woke, Caleb found in the front room, folders spread around her like pieces of a puzzle. He tried to stand but winced, holding his side. You went through it, he said softly. You didn't hide it, she replied. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. Guess I didn't. June stood, holding up one of the photos. You built Carter Land Group? I did. And then you vanished. He nodded. When it turned ugly, she stepped closer. These records, you bought land for people, gave it back after it was taken. I tried, he said, but I was too late. For some. June's voice softened. What happened? Caleb let out a long breath and sank into a chair, as if the truth was finally too heavy to hold. It started simple, he said. My idea was to help small farmers buy land cheap, lease it back with fair terms, keep them from losing it to banks or corporations. I found partners, investors, people who said all the right things. He paused, jaw clenched. Then I found out they were using my company to force people off of land, buying up debt, seizing property, flipping it to developers. I was the face of it. The press called it innovation. I called it theft. June sat across from him, silent. I tried to stop it, pulled my name from the board, gave back what I could, but the damage was done. People blamed me, and they weren't wrong. I let it happen. She reached for his hand. But you didn't walk away. No, he said, voice low. I sold everything I had, disappeared, and I started buying back what they'd stolen. Quietly, piece by piece. No press, no name. Why not let people know it was you? Because they'd only remember the man who took it in the first place. I didn't want thanks. I just wanted to make it right. Her throat tightened. You've been fixing other people's pain while carrying your own. Caleb looked down. It's the only way I can live with myself. June walked to the window. Outside, the remains of the night's chaos lingered, ashes scattered in the brush, a charred stump still smoldering. She turned back to him. You saved me without knowing who I was. Without asking. You didn't even hesitate. He met her eyes. I know what it's like to run. Her chest ached. She crossed the room and knelt beside his chair. I see you now, Caleb Carter. You're not the man they said you were. You're the one who stayed, even when no one else did. He reached out, touching her face with a rough, blood-stained hand. And you're the only one who ever looked past the silence. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the land, not the past, only the fragile, powerful truth they now shared. June hadn't spoken for hours. The sun was setting again over Dust Valley, casting golden shadows on the hills. As she finished packing a small satchel she'd found in the house, Caleb sat on the porch, bandaged and bruised, watching her quietly. He didn't ask her to stay. She didn't explain why she had to leave. The silence between them had grown cold. You lied, she said at last, her voice brittle. Caleb stared at the dirt by his boots. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. That's the same thing, she snapped. You let me think you were just a quiet cowboy hiding from the world, but you're not hiding. You're trying to fix what you helped break. He didn't argue. That made it worse. I trusted you, she said. You gave me space, let me breathe again. And all the while you had this empire behind you. Do you know how that feels? Like I was small, like you pitted me. I never pitted you, June, he said quietly. I saw you. She turned away before her tears could fall. I can't do this. I can't stay here and pretend none of this matters. And with that, she left. Red Hollow was just over a day's walk if you knew the old trails. And June did. She arrived late the next afternoon, covered in dust and sore, not even sure what she was searching for. Maybe answers. Maybe just a place to breathe. But as soon as she entered the corner store near the post office, everything changed. Two women stood in the back, their quiet conversation freezing June in place. They burned down the Dawson's barn last night. One whispered, left a symbol on the door the same as at the ranch fire up on the ridge. The Dawsons. They'd only just moved back in. Got the deed last spring from Carter's group, right? Word is, the same people who wanted that land before are back. And they're meaner. June's stomach twisted. Another customer added, Sheriff says it's organized. Real tactical. They're targeting people who got their land back from the Carter Buyback Fund. June stepped outside, her blood running cold. It wasn't about her anymore. Maybe it never was. She sat on a bench outside, staring at the quiet street. Children played by a water trough. Horses passed by. But beneath the surface, something dark had returned. The same men who hunted her were after others now. People who only had their homes because they fought for them. Caleb knew this. Of course he did. And she had left him behind. Her chest tightened with something heavier than guilt. Regret. Not because he hadn't told her everything, but because she'd always known who he really was. Not just a cowboy, not a tycoon, not even a hero. He was the kind of man who stayed behind when things got hard. The kind who fought quietly, who gave back land not for recognition, but because he couldn't bear to see others lose what he had lost. She'd run from that man, and she needed to go back. By dawn, June was on horseback, riding hard across the hills, ignoring the pain in her leg. The wind whipped her hair, and her heart pounded with urgency. She didn't know what she'd say when she saw him. Maybe she wouldn't say anything. Maybe she'd just stand there until he understood. The ridge appeared as the sky blushed pink. The old ranch house was silent, the front door half open, the chimney cold. "Caleb?" she called, dismounting. No answer. Inside, her pulse raced. The table was still covered in papers and maps, the cot unmade. His coat hung over a chair. His hat rested on the banister. Then she saw it a note pinned to the wall. "Gonna check the Dawson place. They need someone to stand with them." Her breath caught. He'd gone, wounded and alone, still fighting. Not because it was safe, but because someone had to. She spun, mounted up, and rode hard. This time, she would not let him stand alone. The Dawson ran down the canyon's edge, surrounded by dry fields, rusted fences, and stubborn hope. Caleb stood in the barn with half a dozen farmers' men and women who had once lost everything and now stood beside the man who had helped them reclaim it. June arrived just before sunset, her horse foaming and her eyes burning. "You're late," Caleb said, his voice rough but warm. "I came back," she replied, breathless, "and I'm not leaving again." They had only a few hours to prepare. Word had spread quickly. The same crew that burned the barn 2 nights ago would return before dawn, led by Logan Price, June's former lover, the man who betrayed her and sold her out. Now he wanted land, revenge, and power. June helped distribute ammunition and mapped out escape routes behind the barn. Caleb set up defenses along the ridge, using his knowledge of the land to their advantage. "They'll come from the west," Caleb said, pointing to a narrow canyon pass. "The dirt gives way under trucks there. If we catch them there, we can trap them. And if we can't," June asked, "then we make them pay for every foot." Night fell. The wind moaned between the rocks. Just before midnight, headlights appeared, slicing through the dust and sage. The attackers arrived in black trucks, armed and arrogant, sure of themselves. Logan stepped out first, tall and smirking, pistol at his hip. He called out, his voice echoing, "Come on out, Carter. Let's talk business." Caleb stepped forward, calm, rifle in hand. "This isn't business, Logan. It's theft." Logan grinned. "Call what you want, but you got land I want, and people too blind to see who you really are. You gonna hide behind these sheep forever?" June stepped out beside Caleb, her eyes blazing. "No one's hiding," she said, "and you're not getting anything." Logan's face twisted when he saw her. Well, I thought you were gone for good." "I was," she said, "until I remembered who I am." Logan's smirk vanished. Then the first shot rang out. It ripped through the night, striking the barn door just inches from Caleb. Instantly, chaos exploded. Bullets tore across the clearing. The farmers scrambled for cover behind hay bales and old carts, firing back with whatever they had: shotguns, hunting rifles, even a crossbow. June ducked behind a trough, breath ragged, heart pounding. Caleb was 20 feet ahead, crouched behind a wagon, returning fire with steady, practiced aim. One of the attackers tried to sneak along the ridge to the left. June spotted him first. She stood, aimed, and fired. The man fell. Her hands trembled, but she didn't hesitate. Not now. Through the haze of smoke and shouting, she moved on instinct, reloading, shouting warnings, helping an older farmer carry his wounded son behind the barn. She was no longer a victim running from her past. She was the one cutting through the darkness. Suddenly, Caleb called her name. She spun around. Logan was aiming at her from the rocks above. Everything blurred Caleb dove across open ground. A gunshot echoed. Caleb's body jerked in midair and crashed to the earth. June screamed, rushing to him. His shirt was soaked with blood at the shoulder and chest. No. She pressed her hands to the wound, desperate. "Stay with me." He coughed, eyelids fluttering. "You okay?" He whispered. "You idiot," she sobbed. "Why would you do that?" "Because I couldn't lose you again." Behind them, the gunfire faded. Logan's men were retreating, thrown off by the resistance to land in their own casualties. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had finally called the law. But June didn't care. All she saw was the blood on Caleb's chest, spreading like a wound in the earth, the same earth he'd fought for and now bled into. For days, Caleb drifted in and out of consciousness. Pain blurred everything. The sterile white of bandages, the sting of antiseptic, the murmur of distant voices. But through it all, one thing stayed the same. June's hand in his. She never left. When he finally really woke, the sun was streaming through the clinic window. Birds sang outside. A fan hummed softly on the wall. June was asleep in a wooden chair beside him, her hand still wrapped around his. He turned his head, pain burning in his chest where the bullet had grazed his lung. But he didn't care. She was there. He didn't need to ask why. She woke minutes later, as if she sensed a change. "You're awake," she said, her voice thick with relief. He tried to smile. "You look worse than I do," he joked, making her laugh through her tears. "You almost died, Cowboy. Don't make jokes." "Almost," he whispered, "but you pulled me back." She leaned in, resting her forehead gently against his. "You're not leaving yet," she murmured. "Not when we're just beginning." In the days that followed, June rarely left his side. She read to him old westerns, ironically, and brought him soup he always claimed was too salty. They watched the sunrise together from his window. At night, she told him stories from before everything went wrong. Her childhood dreams, the books she wanted to write, the cabin she once drew on a napkin and called home. And he listened, because he'd always wanted someone who saw beyond land and legacy. Someone who truly saw him. One evening, a nurse entered quietly and handed June a small envelope with Caleb's name on it. "We found this in his coat pocket," she said. June opened it later, sitting beside his bed. Inside was a folded note and a simple silver ring, worn smooth by time. The note was brief. "If I don't make it back, give this to her. Tell her it was my mother's. Tell her I wanted her to have it, no matter what." June didn't cry then, but she clutched the ring to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. When Caleb woke, she was waiting. "You weren't supposed to read that yet," he said, his voice rough. "You weren't supposed to get shot." He tried to sit up, wincing. She helped him adjust the pillows. "I didn't mean to rush anything," he said. "That note, it wasn't pressure." "I know," she replied. "It was honesty." He looked at her and saw no fear, no hesitation. Only love. "I used to think I had to build something big to matter," he said. "I thought if I made enough noise, bought enough land, helped enough people, it would fix the things inside me I couldn't fix." She let him speak, silent. "But I was wrong. You don't fix yourself by reaching higher. You do it by reaching inward. And you taught me that." "June." He reached for the ring in her palm. "I don't want to build an empire anymore," he whispered. "I just want to build a home with you." June's breath caught as he held up the ring, his hand trembling. "Will you let me be the reason I stay? Let me be your beginning, not just your rescue." Her eyes brimmed with tears. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Caleb, I will." Tears slid down her cheeks as he slipped the ring onto her finger, simple, imperfect, and perfect. They didn't kiss right away. They didn't have to. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the scent of fresh linens and the hush of healing, two souls who had wandered far and long finally discovered what they'd always hoped for, a place to rest together. A year later, the wind in Dust Valley felt gentler. The summer sun wrapped the hills in gold, and wildflowers swayed along the fences of a modest ranch tucked between two ridges. It wasn't grand or fancy, but it was alive. Chickens pecked near the barn, horses grazed in the paddock, and laughter echoed as children raced through tall grass, chased by a brown dog with a crooked tail and endless energy. Inside, the aroma of cinnamon and warm oats filled the small kitchen. June stood by the window, her baby daughter nestled in one arm while she stirred a pot with the other. Her face glowed with the tired joy of new motherhood and the quiet certainty of belonging. Outside, Caleb tightened the saddle on one of the horses, pausing to smile at the sound of his daughter's coos and June's gentle humming. There were more lines around his eyes now, but they came from laughter, not worry. And when he looked at Lena, swaddled in a blanket made from an old flannel shirt, his heart overflowed with a peace he never thought he'd find. They called her Lena, a name June had always loved. Soft and strong, the ranch had become more than a home. It had become a sanctuary. Twice a week, they opened their gates to children from nearby towns, kids who had known loss, fear, and loneliness. June led sessions under the big oak, using horses as therapy, teaching trust one ride at a time. Caleb taught them how to guide a horse with their voice, not just their hands. The laughter that now filled the land had replaced years of silence. Caleb never reclaimed his old title. No headlines, no public return. But quietly, through local lawyers and anonymous gifts, he helped dozens of families win back land that had once been stolen. He helped build greenhouses, repair wells, restock barns. No one knew his name, but everyone recognized a man with steady hands and kind eyes who always arrived with a tool belt, a bag of seeds, or a silent nod of understanding. One evening, as the sky melted into lavender and gold, Caleb lifted Lena into his arms and carried her toward the pasture, where June waited with 3 horses saddled. "Family ride?" she asked, smiling. He nodded, tucking Lena into the baby wrap across June's chest. Thought it was time she saw the view from the ridge. They mounted up, moving slow and steady. Caleb led, June close behind, their baby nestled against her heartbeat. The climb was peaceful, filled only with bird song and the steady rhythm of hooves. At the top, the valley stretched before them wide, endless and shining. Caleb breathed it in. "This used to be where I ran," he said softly. "Now it's where I stay." June leaned forward, resting her hand on his arm. "You built more than a home here," she whispered. "You built healing." As the sun dipped low, bathing the world in golden light, Caleb looked toward the entrance of their land. A wooden sign, weathered but sturdy, hung at the gate. Carved into it, still proud, were the words, "Carter Ranch, where hope comes home." Caleb smiled. For the first time, the man who once carried the weight of empires and regret knew exactly who he was: a father, a husband, a man finally at peace. And as his horse stepped forward, carrying him beside the woman and child who had saved his soul, Caleb Carter didn't ride into the sunset. He rode straight into everything he'd ever wanted: home. And so, from ashes and silence, 2 wounded souls found not just refuge, but renewal. From the dust of betrayal, trust took root. From the ruins of the past, a new future was built not with walls or titles, but with love, resilience, and a promise to never walk alone again. Caleb and June's story is a reminder that the greatest empires aren't made of land or gold. They're built on quiet courage, second chances, and the family we choose. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that healing is possible even after the fiercest storms, consider subscribing to Echoes of Resilience. Here, we share true, powerful, and heartfelt tales that remind you hope is never far away. Tap subscribe, ring the bell, and join our community of story lovers who believe in light after darkness. Until next time, hold on to kindness, believe in new beginnings, and never stop choosing love. Soul-stirring stories.